I always think food is all around us, and it's often easy to take food for granted because it's all around us. And we think when we do think of food, maybe we do think of, the nutritional aspects, what it does, why it's good for us, but maybe we don't stop to think about where it came from and how it's made. And what the BSc Food Science program is all about is how does the food we encounter every day come to be as it is? I mean, if we just take the example that's here on the slide, we have the tub of Haagen-Dazs vanilla, which is great ice cream, right? And everybody's got to look at that, I presume, or most of us will anyway. We're just going to think, of indulgence and luxury and just something that's really good to. And on a day, I see the rain has stopped and the sun has come out here or something. I'm feeling very much like a tub of Haagen-Dazs vanilla at this point, on a day like this. But a food scientist will look at it a little differently. And that's why I say it's a new way to look at food. Because you'd look at this Haagen-Dazs, and this could be absolutely any food product we can picture. And you can pick it up and you can say, okay, why does it look the way it does? Why does it taste the way it does? Why does it melt the way it does? If you turn it around and look at its ingredients list, what are all those ingredients? There's cream and there's sugar and there's milk and there's emulsifiers and there's stabilizers. What do they do? Why are they there? How was it made? If I went into a plant, into a Haagen-Dazs plant, and one of the fun things about being a food scientist, I've been in some really interesting food plants. I remember once going into the Mars plant in outside London and walking into a place where the air feels like it's about 90% chocolate is just an incredible experience. But anyway, it's like any product. Why does it taste the way it does? Why does it have the properties? How is it made? If you go into a factory, as I said, what is the steps in the process from taking the raw materials and putting them together? If you look at the every food product is going to have a best before date. What does that mean? What happens to it after that date? How do we know it's safe to eat? How do we know why is it packaged the way it does? Why is it in that particular style of package? What's that material made of? What's it doing to the food? So, I say on this slide that like food is probably the most complex thing. I often think interacting with food is the most complex thing we do every day other than being alive. That it's a hugely complex. Every time we cook, it's a scientific experiment. It is when I cook anyway. We're causing all kinds of chemical reactions to take place in the food. We're changing it. We're changing the proteins and the vitamins. We're causing interactions. So what food science is what is as the name suggests, maybe, what is the science of the food that we encounter? How is it made? How is it designed? How is it developed? How do we, as this slide indicates, how do we, come up with new foods? Because people want different things. Sometimes they want health. Sometimes they want indulgence. They want nutrition. They want tailor-made foods. They want new, exciting flavors and textures. And that's, food companies are full of food scientists who are developing these products. So, and it's really important, people often ask, how does it relate to home economics? How does it relate to nutrition? Like, first of all, it's not a degree about cooking, although cooking is a very scientific thing. It's a degree about how does the industry make food products. And I use industry in its widest sense. That could be a farmhouse cheesemaker or an artisan making cheese or making jam or making, fermented meats, that the principles are all the same. So how do we make food? With a little bit of reference to how we put it together and what happens when we cook it. But the focus is very much on the making, the understanding, because that's what science is about. It's all about understanding. And how does it relate to nutrition? I always say it's like food science is from the head up. Like once everything that happens to bring you the food, to put it in front of you in a particular shape or a particular package or in a particular dish, is food science. Once you swallow it, it's nutrition, what it does to your body. But everything up to and including the moment, the taste and the sensory experience you have when it's aroma and its texture when you eat it. That's all the science. And then in our next talk, my colleague Dr. Lucy will talk about where nutrition then takes it in terms of what it does to your body. So hopefully that helps to explain. So it's all about the food that's around us every day. And food scientists see food in a different way, and one of the things I always say is there's more to food than meets the eye. Every single food product has an interesting scientific story. And I must admit, I didn't study food science. I studied a degree in a more general science in Dublin. And one of the reasons I came to UCC is to study food and ended up teaching food here is for somebody like me who grew up, and I grew up in Dublin. I grew up like I was mad for science. I was, I was making labs out of Lego when I was a kid, right? So, you know, I always knew I wanted to go into science, and I studied a biology degree, and I was introduced to a lot of areas of science. And the one that really drew me was food, because I could see here was something that was really interesting, that was so linked to everyday life, that was so linked to something you encounter every day. And that, as somebody who's really interested in science, was what really drew me to food science. So, you know, and last point in this slide is something that's really important, because, you know, things that should be important, I guess, to us is, you know, you want to study a course that you're passionate about, that you find interesting, that you find exciting, but also that'll set you up for a good career. And food science and UCC in particular is hugely linked to our greatest national industrial sector, which is the food industry, the one that really is a huge part of the Irish economy and a huge employer. So we'll talk about that later. So just very briefly, you know, the program is all about applying science, which is about understanding, and technology, which is to make. How do we make cheese? How do we brew beer? How do we, you know, make bread? How do we develop gluten-free bread? That's all the technology side, is the making and creating. To learn how you manufacture, develop food products, food ingredients. Like, it is a strong basis of understanding of biochemistry, microbiology, and chemistry, because these are all really important. Chemistry, because food is all about reactions, you know, when we eat it, when we process it, when we cook it. Microbiology, because it's really important to food that it's safe, that it doesn't go off because of yeast and molds and things which could go on spoilage. And also for a lot of food products, and a lot of really ancient food products like beer and wine and cheese and yogurt, we use microbes. We use yeast to help, and bacteria to help ferment. So microbiology is a really important part of food, sometimes for a good reason, to help us make the food, and sometimes for a bad reason, to make sure it's safe. It's a very practical subject. It's got a lot of laboratory practicals and projects, including in final years, we'll see in a minute, making and developing your own food products. And something that's really important is UCC has been involved in educating people in food science, originally dairy science, for nearly a century. Our first graduates were in the mid-1920s. We'll be coming up to the 100th anniversary soon. And UCC around the world is recognized for the quality of its food science research and teaching, which is really important, because you're learning from people who are actively involved in researching it, and who are, you know, really engaged in their field, which is really important. And we have really good facilities as well. So, you know, really briefly, you know, in first year you do basic sciences. Like, nearly everybody comes in with biology, some of chemistry, some of physics. It's an advantage, but a lot of people come in with just biology. And so you get an introduction to all of those, and an introduction to food science and business subjects. In second year, it's really, you get into the food then, about food chemistry and microbiology in particular, and a bit of statistics and biochemistry and things. And in third year, as you go through it, you get gradually more focused on food. Third year, you start to introduce food products and how we process, how we dry and ferment and heat and pasteurize and can, and all the things we do to food. And then in fourth year, we look at packaging and quality and safety and all, and the product development projects. And in between third and fourth years, we'll see there's a workplace. So the class sizes are about 40 to 50 students. We like to think we've an approachable staff cohort. Our students enjoy their time in UCC. We have very high retention and progression rates in our program. We believe we've unique facilities that allow our students to get good hands-on experience. And some days that lab experience could be analyzing food. You know, you could be analyzing how much protein or fat is in a food product. And other days, and that's very much, are doing a microbiological count on how many yeast are in this sample of wine or whatever it might be. But on another day, you could be a totally different kind of a lab, where you're mixing flavors, and you're doing food lab, if you like, because you're trying to develop a recipe, you're trying to develop a formulation for a product. So labs in lots of different senses, are learning how to make cheese. You know, big emphasis on communication skills, which employers really look for through projects, through students giving presentations. A lot of teamwork in our final year. Some pictures here of final year students working in teams to develop new food products and show them off at end of year events. We've good social support. We've had on and off a good foodies society, as kind of a food society within UCC. And a big part of it is work placement, where our students, third year is kind of a short year. Our students go out for 6 months. Paid work placement. So they're typically out before St. Patrick's Day. So it's a longer summer, but they're spending it in placement. Mostly in Irish, but in Ireland, people do go abroad. Hands-on experience does a huge amount of support for making your CV, the career service set up the interviews for you, and everybody gets a job through the placement service and get fantastic opportunity. And quite a number of people end up going back to their placement employers after they graduate. And, you know, even if you don't, a big advantage to it is on your CV, you've got experience, you've got hopefully a good reference. And also what's really important is you have a feeling for this is what I want to do, or sometimes as importantly, this is what I don't want to do in the future. Okay, so every company that you can think of, food company in Ireland, just some examples in the slide, take our students for work placement. And we can, every course, you know, in UCC will say, of course, there's great job opportunities. We can really stand over this in the food area. We can say, and because there's just such a thriving food industry out there, that anyone who wants a job has a job within, like typically our students finish their exams, you know, in May, they come back for conferring in October, and by conferring, everybody who wants a job has a job at that point. So it's, you know, the big companies come in, the Kerrys, the Glambias, the Diageos, or graduate programs, and hire our students. So it's a fantastic opportunity to get into, you know, our most important, most successful Indigenous, that means Irish. We have a lot of multinationals, we have a lot of American companies doing really well, providing massively important employment in Ireland, like in the pharma sector, like Pfizer, for example, and in the ICT sector, like Microsoft and Dell and Intel. But the difference with food industry is they're Irish companies who are world leading companies, like Kerry and Glanbia and Diageo, who are all over the world. So it's a really successful industry, huge number of jobs, and constantly expanding and developing and looking for graduates. And UCC is one of the most respected feeders for that industry, or the international industry for those who want to travel. So our graduates, you know, there are lots, and on our website, you'll find profiles and little interviews with some of our graduates, like Teresa, who's a business development manager for Kerry Groups, who graduated 9 years ago from UCC. Deirdre O'Carroll, who's a bond supervisor in Irish Distillers, who's a very senior position, again, only 10 years out of college, out of our food science program, from the food science. And a graduate from a number of years before, John O'Connell, who was Entrepreneur of the Year 2 years ago, who set up with a number of friends, Irish West Cork Distillers, and have a lot of very successful products. So some of our our graduates go on to big companies, some of our graduates start big companies. In fact, Kerry Group started with UCC graduates back in the 1960s or 70s, okay? And some of our students nearly finished now go on and study afterwards. They go on to graduate study. They either diversify by going into top programs, or we have some students who might go on and study, you know, business or something, to combine food with business, to apply for certain kinds of job, or to specialize, to do research programs like masters and PhDs. And this is a very well, like if you go into the research and development departments of big food companies, a lot of them, you know, a lot of the people who are working there have masters and PhD degrees, particularly in Ireland from UCC. So there are great pathways for those who want to study on. But, you know, probably about 75% at least of our graduates go straight into employment after their BSc degree. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Just a reminder that and this kind of sums it up and bridges on to our second program, Nutritional Science, which Alice is going to talk about now in a second. And to remind that the minimum CAO points in last year were 463. They were a little bit lower. They were about 455, I think, in 2020. So they've been pretty steady at around the mid 400s for the last number of years. So that's quite a typical kind of entry point. And I guess, you know, it's probably going to be in or around that ballpark again next year. So I hope that was useful. I'm going to hand over to Alice at this point, and we'll be, I'm staying on the line, obviously, and happy to take any questions or comments people might have after that. Thanks very much. I'll stop sharing, Alice, if you want to.
Sure. Thank you, Alan, for a very comprehensive description.
High speed.
I hope this works, and I just realized now that it's.
Yeah, perfect. That's working now.
And I
myself,
want to go into my. Get into slideshow here. Okay.
Into slideshow down the bottom? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry. And for some reason, it's not going exactly where I want to start. Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping everyone can see the presentation, and that you can also hear me, and that the volume is loud enough.
Yeah, perfect, Alice.
Okay, great. So Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our BSc Nutritional Sciences at UCC. I came through this program myself many years ago as a graduate, so I know what it's like to be sitting there thinking, oh, what degree am I going to pursue? And all I'll say is, I suppose I have been studying nutrition in the BSc Nutritional Sciences, and then I've continued on to do a PhD in nutrition at UCC. And now I have the pleasure of teaching nutritional sciences to our students. So when I think about our UCC, I suppose really it is the home for food, for studying food, and we have so many different options. And as Alan has given such a good description there about food science and why you would study food and the different aspects that are involved in the study of food. And I suppose we have things like food marketing, food and entrepreneurship, with international development, food policy, and then we have nutrition. And nutrition sits with I suppose it sits very well. It's quite complementary to the study of food science. We are based at that Brown building, which is our School of Food and Nutritional Sciences, which is located right on campus at UCC. And the one thing I would like to say to you is I have put up a web link there to our school website. And I really would encourage you, if you're interested in food science or nutritional sciences, to just take a few minutes to just look up our programs or anything that, any upcoming events. We have lovely descriptions and videos from past graduates. We've many, there's an introduction to different staff members, our research areas, so much. So I really, if you do have a few minutes and you are interested, I think it's definitely worth having a quick look at our school website, so School of Food Nutritional Sciences. And Alan has already discussed the differences between food science and nutrition. And I suppose as Alan has given such a comprehensive description of food science and the nature of how the food products are made, and I suppose the complexity involved in the production of such food products. And then when we think about nutrition, really, we are focusing on how food affects our health. So we talk about, in terms of what is the nutritional process. And one of the key things that I want to articulate to you is when we talk about the field of nutritional science. And actually, when I say to you, it is quite young, it's not old, but we all always know that there was a strong connection between food and health for many millennia. But as an actual science, it's quite recent. I mean, the first vitamin was isolated and defined less than 100 years ago, which is quite recent. So as a science, we draw on many different sciences. It's a balance. It's so multifaceted. We link with chemistry, biology, genetics, biochemistry, physiology, food science. So really, it's a unique blend, but ultimately the connection is always, understanding how our diet and food affects our health and our well-being. And when we think about it, we think about it more holistically. We're thinking across our lifespan and across our different life stages. And when we think about nutrition and why study nutrition, well, has there ever been a more critical time? We've just come out of a major global pandemic. We see even in 2022, that many parts of the world where we see there's high degrees of food insecurity, malnutrition, food shortages. And then on the other side of the coin, we see much hunger. And then on the other side of the coin, and often in the same locations, we see this increased and heightened prevalence of overweight and obesity. So we've what we call it the double burden of malnutrition, where we see a coexistence of hunger, micronutrient deficiencies, so deficiencies in vitamins and minerals, and overweight and obesity, leading to increased risk of ill health and chronic disease on the rise. So we have from a nutrition perspective, if you're a problem solver, we have many challenges that face our food supply currently, and the security of our food supply, and the health and well-being of our populations. So it's really an interest, being interested in food, but actually being interested in these broader societal and global challenges. So coming back to UCC and our Nutritional Sciences program, and what will you study? Well, it's to arm you and to make you ready to be able to face these challenges in your professional career down the road. So the nutritional science program, when I think about it, it takes a blend of the basic sciences, the biological sciences. It marries in food science. There's a strong biological emphasis. We're looking at the body and physiology, the connection to nutrition. And all of these are, I suppose, they're joined in a holistic and in a unique and interesting way, so that you have the knowledge, but not just the knowledge, also the skills that are required to be able to operate as a nutritional scientist in the field of nutrition going forward. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, and this is all available in the UCC website, the different subjects across the different years. And when I talk about modules, we're talking about, a discrete envelope of lectures, or a number of lectures in a particular topic. So for example, you would have modules in physics or nutrition or biology or chemistry and so on. But overall, if I look at the balance of the course each year, when we start, so it's a 4-year program, and when we start the course, the first thing is, we cover nutrition in year 1, but really it's to get you well grounded in all of the sciences. Because after all, remember, this is a science degree that you will be, an honorary science degree that you will be graduating with. So it's very, very important that you have that strong basis, that strong fundamental knowledge of all of the sciences and maths. And during this year, we will introduce you to nutrition, and we do cover nutrition. But then every year after that, as you can see, we need a strong grounding in science in year 1, so that in year 2, you are able to apply that scientific knowledge to advance in areas like biochemistry, physiology, to gain an understanding of metabolism, to gain an understanding of microbiology, and again, and food chemistry. And so we also, and then by doing this, you were able to advance your knowledge in nutrition, because the nutrition becomes more complex and more applied. In 3rd year, again, you're very much focused on mastering nutrition during this year, but there's also a strong emphasis on developing your food science skills. And this is really important, because your work placement is, it's a 24-week work placement, as Alan has noted, and it's so important. And all of our students, we get such good reports from the work placement. It's such a positive experience for so many of our students, most of our students. And they really, really enjoy it and place great value in it. So yes, so it's that upskilling, so that you are ready for industry in whatever role you take, whether it's in, it's in the lab, or whether it's working in the area of clinical nutrition, maybe in a hospital, doing dietetics, whether it's working for a government advisory body, and so on and so forth. And I'll come to some examples in a second. And by the time you get to 4th year, well, really it's mastery. It's gone from the apprentice model all the way to the mastery. It's the application of nutrition knowledge at this stage. You are the experts at this point in the area of nutrition. And it's just that finessing in that year. So that the 4th year of the program is very much strongly focused on nutrition. When we talk about the work placement, and Alan has talked to you, really it is, it's like a jewel in the program. It's of such immense value for us and for all of our students. Many of our students will undertake their placement, and then they will be offered graduate programs and things like that once they graduate. It really is the opportunity to I suppose, to take your studies and put them into action. So, I mean, the skills that people learn are great. They're not just, in terms of technical skills or academic skills, but, things like teamwork, decision-making, leadership skills, communication skills, even, management skills, coordination skills, and so on. So it really does help to develop the graduate, so that you really are ready to hit the ground running when you do actually graduate. And as Alan has shown you, we've many different, in Ireland mainly, but also we've done international work placements. Many of our students will opt for clinical placements in our hospitals, because they will have an interest in pursuing careers in dietetics after they graduate. So they get a very good experience, and they enjoy those sorts of placements. So as I said, we have our work placements are in many different areas. the vast majority of our workplace students will go into the food industry. Some will spend their time in research. Some will help promotion and food policy, or the FSAI is another area. And then, as I said, clinical nutrition or the healthcare setting, particularly for those who are interested in pursuing the athletics. In terms of entry requirements, these are on the website, and these are just to keep an eye on them, because if they do get updated. But the main point is that one must have one science subject at a H4 level as an entry requirement for this program. In terms of mature students, yes, the application is through the CAO, but it's different deadlines, and usually applicants are required to submit a detailed report or dossier to support their applications. There generally is about 40 students that are enrolled in our Nutritional Sciences program each year. When we talk about studying Nutritional Sciences at UCC, why? Well, Alan has already put a very good argument for food at UCC. So really, we have a long-standing relationship with food research, nutrition research, and your lecturers, you know, they're highly sought after around the world, globally, and they're well known for their contributions to the discipline. So, for example, for nutrition, and most of us will have our own areas of specialty, and we're really too excited to bring the discipline to you, you know, that to encourage you in your journey in nutrition or in food science. So this is our head of school, Professor Kylie, but we, you know, it's really, in terms of our research, you know, it's a strong focus. You know, we're strongly focused on research-led learning, and we try to bring all of our work into the classroom. So in saying that, the popularity of nutrition science, well, nutrition is becoming more and more popular in recent years, and this is mirrored by the popularity of our courses, CAO entry points. And so, as you can see, back in 2020, and I appreciate that we had slightly different times that year with cutoff points, but due to the pandemic, but we saw this sharp increase up to 518 points, and CAO range then was in 2020, and then in 2021 we saw a further increase to 555 last year. I appreciate, you know, this year things might be different with the leaving cert, so we'll just wait and see in terms of, you know, whether if the points will level off or whether there will be further increases. So in terms of career opportunities, so the first thing I really want to highlight is when we talk about nutrition, there's never just one job associated with the nutritionist. It's a very broad field, and nutritional scientists work in many, many different areas. And we see, like, even in recent years, the area of performance nutrition, sports nutrition has literally exploded. And we've so many undergrads on our program, even at the moment, who are so interested in developing careers in that area. So that's a new area. We've always had undergrads who were interested in specializing in the area of clinical nutrition or dietitians to work within the hospital settings, to work with patient groups. So when you think about nutritional science, you graduate as a nutritional scientist, but really that's kind of the start of the journey, because most of our nutritional scientists will specialize in an area. So they'll either work with food or food and health, and maybe in research. Public health nutrition, since the pandemic, has become this another huge area, a really emerging and growing area. Sports nutrition, as I said, and you know, and I suppose many people, like health policy is another area that's up and coming, and other aspects or avenues would be things like pharma, medical devices, pharma, food business, entrepreneurship. You know, just to name a few. So the real point, and what I'm really trying to say, is there are lots of different avenues one can pursue with a nutritional science degree. So coming back, our most recent graduate outcome survey data, what do we know? Well, we see that on graduation, 50%, so half of the class will go straight into employment. Most of those are employed in the food sector, but there is, you know, some diversity there. You know, nutrition advisory, governmental bodies, you know, graduate programs for the food sector will be very, very common. Pharma would be another sector. And then we have graduates have, you know, the other 42% would be looking at, sorry, my slides. Well, the other side, so in our class every year, we see a sizable portion of our graduates would go on and pursue a postgrad in dietetics. We also look at, you know, quite a sizable portion will go into sports nutrition. It's become a massive area. Public health and health promotion and nutrition research also have become very prominent areas. We also have nutrition science students who will pursue careers or want to specialize in the areas of food science or on other applied sciences. So really, what I'm trying to articulate is that there are many, many options, and there's many emerging options and different career areas. So, you know, it's very much finding your niche area that suits you, that you feel strongly and passionate about within that area of nutrition. So some questions, and I can hold these or I can just cover them now. Does this, that I often get asked, does this degree qualify me as a dietitian? No, you will graduate as a nutritional scientist. However, many of our graduates will continue on their studies and they will complete a postgraduate qualification in dietetics. There's many in Ireland. We have many in the UK, Northern Ireland, University of Ulster, Coleraine. And most recently, since 2020, we now have our own MSc in Human Nutrition and Dietetics at the School of Food and Nutritional Sciences at UCC. So that's been a wonderful addition. And there are 12 places on that program each year. Another question, subject requirements that I often get asked, do I need to have biology, chemistry, and physics on entry to the Nutritional Sciences program? One science subject is a requirement, and which I've previously outlined. You don't need to have, it's great to have multiple science subjects, but it's not a requirement. But really, you know, if you are starting multiple sciences from scratch, I'm not going to lie, there is a workload, and you know, you do need to engage and concentrate on these subjects in first year. But the university does have very good supports in place to a support student. The assumption is everyone is starting at beginner's level. So there are weekly tutorials available for students who are new to these subjects. If I don't get the points to study nutritional sciences at UCC, well, there are some options, and I'm just going to say, you know, sometimes people, they do, if there are space on the nutritional sciences programs, they can transfer it. If there is a space, it can be quite competitive. From other programs, science programs within SEFs or within the school, so food science, after first year. Also, I suppose just to bring to your attention, we do have a one-year postgraduate diploma in nutrition. So basically, if you have a science background and you want to specialize in nutrition, often it's people want to specialize in nutrition to go on to do dietetics. We have a one-year postgraduate diploma in nutrition at the school, and I've put up the details here. So I would strongly advise you to look at our website, the school website, School of Food and Nutritional Sciences. I've included our social media links. And if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact either Ruth or me. We would only be delighted to help you if we can. Thank you.